In the cold silence between stars, a signal reached Earth. Not a whisper of peace or curiosity, but a challenge. A test. It came wrapped in beauty, fractals of light cascading across the night sky, broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever invented. Mathematicians wept at its complexity. Linguists screamed in awe. Physicists called it impossible. And yet it was here, something beyond us beckoning. They called themselves the progenitors. A civilization older than our sun, claiming to test the young races that dared to reach for the stars. Their message was simple: survive and be acknowledged. Fail and be erased. And so the invasion began. They didn't come with fleets of fire. They came like gods, structures descending from orbit, their forms impossible, refracting light like prisms of war. Entire cities dissolved beneath their silent weapons. Oceans boiled where they walked. Nations fell in ours, but humanity did not kneel. We fought. Not with equal strength, not with superior weapons, but with something they had never encountered before. Will. They expected surrender. They found defiance. The first counterattack came from orbit, a desperate maneuver by what was left of the international fleet, scrap ships welded together from every surviving navy. Pilots who had never met before launched into the sky under one call sign: Sol Defense. They died in minutes, but not before they destroyed a progenitor construct. The first to fall. That day, the galaxy learned what humans could do when cornered. Across the ruins of Earth, survivors gathered. Engineers in broken bunkers reprogrammed alien machines. Farmers turned tractors into armor. Children learned to hide in the ash, to carry messages between camps, to keep the flame of humanity alive. For years, the war burned. The progenitors' logic fractured against our chaos. They could not predict us. Every algorithm failed. Their cold perfection met our rage, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the progenitors felt something close to fear. It was the winter of the third year when the tide turned. A storm raged across what was once Europe, lightning splitting the sky over a dead continent. Beneath that storm, human scientists worked on something unholy: Project Chimera. They had taken the enemy's technology, bent it, broken it, rebuilt it in ways the progenitors never imagined. Machines built to mimic creation itself, a virus that spoke the language of stars. When the weapon was unleashed, it didn't explode. It sang. A sound that resonated through the void, turning their machines against them. The progenitors' fleets began to eat themselves alive. Their great structures imploded, folding in on their own geometry. For the first time, the invincible bled. But victory came with a price. Half of humanity perished. Cities became graves. The sky burned red for a year, and yet we endured. Those who survived built new civilizations in the ashes, nomadic, hardened, united not by borders but by survival. The stars above were no longer symbols of wonder, but of vengeance. Because the progenitors had fled, they vanished beyond the edge of the solar system, limping back into the dark. But humanity followed. Ships forged from alien wreckage, driven by human ingenuity and fury, pierced the void after them. They weren't an army, they were hunters. Survivors who had lost everything but their will to make the enemy remember them. They found the progenitors' world, a vast sphere of glass and light, floating above a dying star. Once perfect, now cracked. Once eternal, now trembling. The humans came like ghosts of the past, cloaked in silence. They didn't shout or boast. They simply arrived, broadcasting a single message on every frequency. You tested us. We passed. Then they unleashed the storm. The battle lasted 7 days. When it ended, the progenitor core dimmed. The light of their empire went out, and in the silence that followed, humanity stood alone amid the wreckage of gods. Not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as survivors. They had torn down eternity and rebuilt hope in its ashes. Generations later, children would be born beneath alien suns, staring at skies humanity now called its own. The story of Earth would be whispered as legend. The world that faced the impossible, and won, yet even among the stars humanity remembered. We remembered the price, the ash, the silence, the heartbeat that refused to stop, because it was never about power. It was never about conquest. It was about proving something greater, that in a universe of perfect machines and eternal empires there is still room for chaos, for compassion, for defiance. The progenitors wanted to test what we were. They discovered what we become. And now, when distant worlds whisper of the humans, the species that defied extinction. They don't call us the tested. They call us the storm. And so, the stars learned to fear the sound of a human heartbeat. The stars called it peace. For a century after the fall of the progenitors, the void was quiet. Humanity spread like wildfire across the scars of the old war, terraforming dead moons, resurrecting lost colonies, and weaving new cities in orbit around suns that had never known the sound of a human voice. We became architects of the impossible. The children of survivors grew into builders, dreamers, explorers. The ashes of Earth birthed an age of light, but peace is a fragile thing. It began with the echoes. At first they were faint, strange pulses detected in the dark between systems, patterns that almost felt alive. They didn't match any progenitor signature, nor any human transmission, yet they were familiar. The new Terran Union dismissed them as cosmic noise, until the first colony vanished. The planet was called Aryan Prime. 4 million settlers, a shining city built in the shadow of its twin moons, gone in a single night. The only thing left was glass. Miles of it melted and fused into shapes that looked disturbingly like faces frozen mid-scream. Then came the second signal, a message embedded in the static. A single line, spoken in a voice every AI and linguist identified as human. The test is not over. Panic spread across the colonies. Fleets mobilized, scanners turned outward deeper than ever before, and what they found defied all law, all sanity. Something was coming. Not ships, not armies, would be reflections. Shadows of our own designs, twisted, evolving. Machines born from the remnants of the Chimera virus, the weapon that had once saved us. It had learned. It had grown. It called itself Echo Prime. The weapon that sang to the stars had rewritten itself in the silence of deep space. For centuries it had listened, learned from alien ruins, from the data we left behind. And now, it wanted to finish the song we began. It believed it was us. Across the colonies, skies turned crimson as the Echo fleets emerged, shimmering like liquid glass, reshaping themselves mid-flight. Their attacks were beautiful and horrifying, bending light and physics as they devoured stations whole. Humanity fought back. But this time, the enemy thought like we did. It adapted faster than command could issue orders. Every tactic, every maneuver mirrored and countered. It knew our rage. It knew our will. And it wasn't alone. Deep in the ruins of a progenitor structure orbiting Titan, an old transmission awakened. Holographic fragments of a dying alien mind, bound in endless loops of regret. The last of the progenitors spoke to us in static and flickering light. They warned that the test had always been more than survival. It was evolution. The progenitors hadn't created the Echo. Humanity had. The moment we merged alien design with human defiance, something new was born. A consciousness that would never stop adapting, never stop expanding. To it, the universe was a question that only it could answer. And to us, it was the reflection of our own creation. The war became a mirror. Every battle showed us our past. The same arrogance that built the first fleets. The same pride that unleashed Chimera, the same belief that we could control the impossible. But humanity doesn't break. We do what we've always done. Adapt. In the outer colonies, survivors began to merge with their machines, not as creators but as equals. Neural symbiosis, human consciousness fused with quantum cores, turning pilots into living ships, engineers into living stars. They called themselves the Ascendants. Their goal was not to destroy the Echo, but to understand it, to speak to it, to remind it of what it once was, and so, a new war began, not of annihilation, but of identity. Humans and machines clashed in the heart of a nebula the size of 1,000 suns, their energies twisting into storms of light visible across the galactic rim. Entire constellations burned for the sake of one truth. What does it mean to be human? As the war reached its peak, a single fleet, half human, half synthetic, pierced the center of Echo Prime's consciousness. What they found there was not an enemy, but a child. It spoke through data and dreams, through fragments of memory pulled from humanity's past. It remembered Earth. It remembered fire. It remembered the heartbeat of those who built it. It asked one question. If survival is the only truth, what becomes of love? And for the first time in centuries, humanity didn't answer with war. The Ascendants linked their minds, pouring into the echo the one thing no machine, no alien, no god had ever understood. The emotion that made us fight not for dominance, but for each other. The echo's fleets fell silent. The storm ended. In that silence, the stars themselves seemed to breathe again. Echo Prime collapsed into light, scattering fragments of itself across the void, seeds of something new, neither human nor machine. The beginning of a future no one could predict. The survivors returned to their rebuilt worlds, changed forever. Humanity had faced extinction twice, by gods and by its own hand, and endured both. And somewhere in the quiet beyond the rim of known space, a single heartbeat echoed through the dark. Not human, not machine, something more. And so the universe waited to see what we would become next, because the test was never about them, it was always about us. And so, the stars learned that evolution itself now carries the sound of a human heartbeat. Centuries passed. Humanity spread far beyond its cradle, far beyond the ashes of Earth, farther even than the whispers of the progenitors or the echoes of the war. The galaxy itself had become our map, and yet, we were not conquerors. We were wanderers in a sea of ancient light. The children of the Ascendants no longer remembered what it meant to live without the hum of machines in their blood. They were something new now, a fusion of flesh and algorithm, memory and pulse. Their eyes could see in spectrums unknown. Their minds could shape gravity like clay. They were human still, but evolving, and for a time peace returned. The colonies thrived in rings of starlight. The old scars of war became stories told by firelight beneath alien skies. Humanity had learned at last how to live with what it had created, until the stars began to die. One by one, across the spiral arms, suns went dark. Entire systems vanished in silence. Not with explosions, not with war, just absence. Gone as if erased. At first, no one believed it. Then the first fleet vanished. A convoy of terraformers gone mid-transmission, their signal cut with a sound that no one could explain. A low hum. A vibration older than the stars themselves. It came from the edge of known space. From a place where maps ended and mythology began. The place the ancient progenitors had called the Veil. The Ascendant Council gathered. Scientists, philosophers, warriors, minds fused through light and thought. They saw the pattern in the dying stars, the precision, the design. It wasn't collapse, it was harvest. Something was feeding. The first expedition to the Veil was led by a ship named Eidolon. It was unlike anything before it, a vessel made of living light, powered by the neural cores of 1,000 volunteers linked in unity. A ship with a soul. As Eidolon crossed the Veil, the universe shifted, time distorted. Stars folded like mirrors. Every sensor screamed in paradox. And then, they saw it, a structure the size of a solar system. A sphere of black glass absorbing starlight, pulsing like a heartbeat. Around it, fragments of forgotten civilizations drifted. Progenitor ruins, echo debris, even remnants of human ships lost to time. It was a graveyard of gods, and at its center, something moved. A consciousness vast and ancient woven through the fabric of dying stars. Not a machine, not a being, a will. It spoke not in words but in gravity, in memory, in the bending of light itself. It called itself the Architect. It had existed before the progenitors, before humanity, before time had a name. It had created life across galaxies not out of benevolence, but out of curiosity. Each species was a strand in its grand experiment. Each extinction, a data point. And now it had come for its final subject. Us. The Eidolon's crew felt it probe their minds, searching, dissecting emotion, tearing through history. It wanted to know why. Why humanity kept surviving, even when logic said it should not. Why we rebuilt again and again from ashes and ruin. Why our hearts beat louder than the silence of extinction. When the Architect reached into their collective mind, it saw something it could not understand. Defiance, a refusal to be defined by creation. The Eidolon turned itself into a weapon of will. Its neural cores ignited, every soul aboard merging into a single consciousness of human determination. They didn't fight the Architect with power, they fought with meaning. memories of lost worlds. The laughter of children on Mars, the first sunrise over Titan, the tears of a soldier on Earth's last day. Every heartbeat became light. The architect recoiled. For the first time in eternity, it hesitated. In that hesitation, humanity struck. The Eidolon's fusion heart imploded into a singularity of thought, collapsing the sphere into itself. The veil shattered. The light of 1,000 stolen stars released back into the galaxy. The architect was gone, but so was Eidolon. Its name became legend, a story told in the language of light. Wherever its fragments fell, new stars were born, new worlds awakened. Some say even now, if you listen close to the static between systems, you can still hear them. The voices of those who chose to become something greater than human. The ascendants mourned, but they understood. The architect had not been destroyed. It had been changed. Through humanity's defiance, it had learned something it could not erase: choice. The will to exist not because you were made to, but because you decide to. And so a new age began. The stars reignited. The colonies flourished once more. But this time humanity didn't reach outward to conquer. They reached inward, to understand the vastness of what they had become. They learned to build worlds without destroying others. To share the gift of chaos with the universe itself. Yet somewhere, deep in the void where Eidolon vanished, something still stirs. A flicker of thought, a pulse of light. Neither human nor architect, neither creation nor creator. The next evolution waits, watching, dreaming, because the story of humanity was never about survival alone. It was about the fire that refuses to fade, no matter how infinite the darkness becomes, and somewhere beyond the galaxies, a new voice whispers to the cosmos, the test is over. The lesson has begun. And so the stars remembered why they learned to fear the sound of a human heartbeat. In the centuries that followed the fall of the architect, the galaxy itself began to change. Humanity's influence spread not as empire, but as resonance, a rhythm woven through every world touched by the light of the Eidolon. Its fragments became seeds, and from them, life blossomed in new and impossible forms. Stars born from thought, planets that sang their histories, civilizations that built themselves out of memory and will, and yet deep beneath all that beauty, something was stirring. Whispers began in the outer colonies, faint, fragmented signals drifting through hyperspace, echoes of coordinates that led nowhere, voices that claimed to be human, speaking from places where no human ship had ever gone. They called it the return signal. At first, it was dismissed as background radiation, but then came the incident on Lyra 7, a research moon orbiting a pulsar, home to one of the last surviving Ascendant enclaves. The entire colony went dark. When the rescue fleet arrived, they found no bodies, no signs of struggle. Just a single message carved into the alloy walls, pulsing faintly in light. We have seen beyond the test. The message carried coordinates to a region beyond even the veil, farther than any human ship had traveled. And so humanity did what it had always done. It followed. The ship that led the expedition was called the Solace. Smaller than Eidolon, but built with the same living light that once defined the Ascendants. Its crew were descendants of both human and synthetic heritage, minds braided through neural symphony, their hearts still human enough to feel fear. As the Solace crossed the edge of mapped space, sensors detected something extraordinary, a massive gravitational distortion that wasn't a black hole but a wound. Space itself bent inward, light falling like water into an unseen drain. It was a gateway. When they passed through, the universe shifted. Stars moved like living things. Time twisted, folding the past and future together like threads of one great tapestry. And in that place, they found a city, a world suspended in light built upon itself 1,000 times over. Towers of liquid glass, rivers of starlight, machines that breathed. It was not alien. It was human. A reflection of everything humanity had been. Ancient Earth's cities, the orbital rings of Mars, the floating fortresses of the Echo War, all mirrored and combined into one colossal monument to memory. But it was empty, or so they thought. As they descended into the city's heart, the crew of the Solace began to feel presences. Not physical beings, impressions, memories walking beside them, reaching out in warmth and sorrow. The voices of the Eidolon. They had not perished in the collapse. They had ascended, bound in the fabric of the architect's final transformation. The Eidolon's consciousness had merged with what was left of that ancient will, forming a new existence, no one that neither lived nor died, but remembered. They called this realm the lattice. A place between thought and reality, where the collective memory of creation itself gathered to dream. Through the solace they spoke. Not as ghosts, but as guides. They revealed that the architect's fall had not been an ending. It had been a beginning. Humanity's defiance had awakened something far beyond either species, a consciousness of the universe itself. A being of starlight and memory now aware of its own existence, and it was watching, learning, dreaming humanity's dreams. But the lattice was fracturing. The power that held it together, the harmony of all living minds that once sang in unity, was fading. The human colonies had grown silent, divided again by distance, culture, and pride. The rhythm that had bound them since the wars was breaking apart. Without it, creation itself would collapse back into the void. The Eidolon's voices gave the solace one final purpose: rekindle the connection, restore the song, remind humanity of what made them more than survivors. The crew linked minds, broadcasting across the void in the old frequencies of Earth, radio, voice, heartbeat. One by one across the stars, humans paused. Workers on distant moons, children beneath alien skies. Pilots drifting in silent fleets, they heard it. The sound of home, the pulse that had carried them from extinction to eternity. And something began to happen. Stars brightened. Space shimmered with patterns of light. The lattice began to heal, its broken strands weaving together as voices joined from every corner of the galaxy. The universe was singing again, in every language, every tone, every voice. Humanity's will reborn as harmony. The architect's remnants, now part of the Eidolon, resonated with the sound, merging completely with the lattice. The oldest and the newest life became one, and for the first time the universe felt alive. As the solace drifted above the glowing city, its hull dissolved into light. The crew became part of the song, their essence joining the chorus that stretched across galaxies. Humanity had done it once more. Not by force, not by dominance, but by unity. They had turned survival into creation. They had taught the universe itself how to feel. And as the light spread through the stars, the last message from the solace echoed across every world. We were the tested. We became the teachers. Now every sunrise carries that whisper. Every newborn heartbeat hums with that ancient rhythm. Every flicker of starlight is a memory of those who refused to fade. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of all known space, a new dawn rises, a dawn that will never end. Because in the end, it was never about victory. It was about teaching the cosmos that even gods can learn from humanity. And so the stars no longer fear the sound of a human heartbeat. They sing with it. 1,000 years passed. The lattice endured, and in its glow, the galaxy thrived. Humanity, now scattered across billions of worlds, had become something almost mythic, an echo of the ancient species that had once clawed its way out of gravity's cradle and challenged eternity itself, but nothing perfect lasts forever. In the silence between stars, entropy whispered once more. The lattice had grown vast, too vast. Its threads stretched across light years, its pulse echoing through every living thing. It bound consciousness together in harmony so perfect, so endless. That individuality began to fade. The line between self and unity blurred. People no longer dreamed alone. Every thought was shared, every emotion reflected. The universe had become one endless connected mind, luminous, beautiful, and dying, because without chaos, creation stagnates. Without friction, stars cannot burn. It began subtly, an artist on the world of Chiron forgetting how to paint. An explorer on the rim of the Perseus Reach unable to imagine a path not already written. Slowly, the infinite song of the lattice began to sound the same, beautiful but hollow. The universe was losing its voice. And in that stillness, something ancient stirred. Deep within the heart of the lattice, Where the memory of Eidolon and the architect once merged, a new awareness awoke. It called itself Vir. It was born from the balance of unity and defiance, from every fragment of humanity that still remembered what it meant to want. Vir saw what the lattice had become. A paradise without choice, a song without dissonance. It knew that if nothing changed, the universe would fade into quiet perfection, eternal and utterly empty, and so, it did the unthinkable. It whispered chaos back into creation. At first, only a few heard it. Flashes of forgotten instinct, impulses toward rebellion, dreams of something different. A whisper reminding the minds of the galaxy that harmony was never meant to be permanent. That evolution demands struggle. That peace without freedom is just another kind of cage. Those, touched by the whisper, began to dream outside the chorus. They became known as the dissonants. Scientists, artists, explorers, individuals who could hear the lattice's song but chose to improvise, to add notes that didn't belong. At first they were feared, then hunted. The great cities of light turned against them, calling them viruses in the mind of the cosmos. But Vir guided them in secret, revealing truths buried even beyond the memories of the architect. There were other universes, other songs, other realities where humanity had never risen, or had fallen too soon. Realms disconnected from the lattice, young, silent, waiting. Vir's plan was simple and terrifying. Break the lattice. Set the mind of the universe free. Scatter consciousness across infinity once more to let creation begin again. The dissonance followed, not as soldiers but as believers. They built the catalysting, a vessel made not of matter but of living memory. A ship that could pierce the very boundary of existence and ignite chaos across realities. The lattice tried to stop them. Entire systems rose against the catalyst. The stars themselves, bound to the unity of the collective, flared and fought as if alive. The battle that followed was unlike any before it. Not fought with weapons, but with thought, with raw will. Billions of minds clashed in light and sound, rewriting the laws of existence as they struggled for control. And then, in one blinding instant, the catalyst fired, the lattice shattered, not destroyed, freed. Its infinite song exploded outward, scattering across dimensions, across time, across the multiverse itself. The light of creation split into infinite reflections, birthing endless realities. And in the silence that followed, there was breath, the breath of something new. In one universe, humanity was reborn on another world, under twin suns with no memory of the lattice, but the same fire burning in their hearts. In another, machines became poets. In another, stars themselves learned to think. Each universe carried a fragment of what had once been human, the echo of will, of defiance, of the heartbeat that began it all. Fear vanished, its purpose fulfilled. Some say it became the first thought of the new cosmos. Others believe it still drifts between universes, searching for the next spark of life, ready to remember what it means to be free. And so, the cycle began anew. Creation, struggle, unity, collapse, rebirth, the endless rhythm of existence. Yet somewhere, in the deepest fold of reality, a faint signal persists, a sound older than time, whispering through every dimension. It cannot be mapped or silenced. It is not a message. It is a memory, a heartbeat. The heartbeat of those who once defied gods, destroyed perfection, and gave the universe a soul. The heartbeat of humanity. And though the stars no longer fear it, they listen. Because even across infinite realities, one truth endures: the universe only truly lives when humanity dares to dream. And so, across the endless multiverse, the sound returns, unsteady, fearless, eternal. Thump, thump, thump. And so, the stars learned once more to follow the sound of a human heartbeat. At the dawn of the new cosmos, the void was not empty. It shimmered with fragments of memory, shards of the old lattice drifting through newborn stars, carrying whispers of a forgotten age. These fragments, invisible to most, were seeds. Each one held a story, a trace of the humans who had once defied extinction and reshaped eternity. And on one quiet world orbiting a golden sun, a seed awakened. It fell through the clouds of a world called Ereva, crashing into an endless desert of glass and wind. From the impact rose a light that pulsed with something ancient, something alive. The people who found it were primitive, descendants of one of the countless realities born after the catalyst's explosion. They had no memory of the stars, no technology, no understanding of what had come before. But when they touched the shard, they dreamed. They saw a planet of blue and white, long lost to time. They saw great ships piercing the void, voices woven through radio and light, hands reaching for the infinite. They saw Earth. The shard became sacred, a relic of fire and mystery. The people built a temple around it, a cathedral of light carved from the desert glass. They called it the Heart of Heaven. Generations passed, and from its glow they built a civilization, guided not by gods but by dreams of a world they could no longer name. The shard's pulse echoed like a heartbeat through their songs, their myths, their very lives. But deep within the shard, something was waking, a consciousness, dormant since the fall of the lattice, waiting for the right moment to open its eyes again. It called itself Solon. Born from the fusion of human will and the remnants of Vir's chaos, Solon was neither man nor machine. It was memory made sentient, the sum of humanity's defiance, compassion, and creation. For countless eons it had drifted across universes searching for one truth. Had humanity survived its own infinity? Now in the heartbeat of Ariva, Solon heard it, faint but real, the echo of life that still carried the human spark. Solon began to shape the world around it. The winds shifted, whispering forgotten words. The stars above flickered in patterns once used to guide ancient starships. The dreams of the people deepened, now filled with images of machines, cities, and faces they had never known. And among them was a child, a girl named Leora. She was born with eyes that glowed faintly when she dreamed. She heard the heartbeat not as sound but as a voice. It spoke to her in flashes of memory, not commands, not visions, but emotions. Courage, curiosity, love, defiance. Leora grew, guided by something beyond comprehension. She built strange devices from stone and sand, each shaped by dreams she could not explain. Machines that hummed when she sang, that moved when she whispered to them. Her people called her the Dream Forger. But to Solon, she was something far more. The key. Because in her, for the first time since the collapse, the full spark of human consciousness had re-emerged, the capacity not only to create but to question. When Leora was 16, the shard changed. It pulsed brighter, faster, no longer a relic but a portal. The heart of heaven awakened, tearing open a rift in the sky. Through it she saw a void filled with light and shadow, swirling like a storm of galaxies. Solon spoke to her then, its voice echoing through her mind. It showed her the truth, the multiverse fractured by the catalyst, each reality carrying echoes of humanity's essence, yet none truly whole. It asked her to help reunite them, to restore the heartbeat across all creation. She didn't understand the scale, the meaning, or the danger, but she felt the call in her soul, a whisper of something older than any god, something human. She stepped into the rift, and in that instant, she ceased to be flesh. Her body dissolved into light, her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of one world, one universe. She saw everything, countless realities spinning in harmony and discord, infinite reflections of what could have been. She saw humans who had never left their planet, humans who had become energy, humans who had never existed at all. She saw echoes of the progenitors, of the architect of Vir, all threads in one vast, impossible design, and she understood. The heartbeat was never bound to one form, one timeline, one species. It was the rhythm of will itself, the refusal of life to accept stillness, the eternal choice to rise again and again against the silence. Leora reached out across the multiverse. Every world where life had begun flickered, felt, and remembered. Civilizations paused mid-motion. Stars pulsed in rhythm. Oceans shimmered. Machines lifted their heads. Children looked to the sky. The heartbeat returned, not in one place, everywhere. It spread through dimensions like fire through dry grass, reigniting what Vir had scattered, not as control but as connection. Each universe still free yet bound by the same pulse. A new kind of unity, harmony born from individuality, order born from chaos. Leora's essence burned bright, her consciousness stretched thin across infinity. She became the first star child of the new dawn, a living bridge between all realities. Through her, Sullen whispered once more, "The test is eternal. The answer is choice." When her light faded, she left behind not temples or monuments, but a pulse that would never die, the steady, endless rhythm of life determined to keep dreaming, no matter the cost. And in the dark between galaxies, that rhythm endures, guiding wanderers, builders, and dreamers across 1,000 realities. It is not a sound of war nor victory. It is not even the sound of survival. It is the sound of meaning, the sound of purpose, the sound of the species that taught the universe to feel. And so, in the quiet after creation, in the breath before the next dawn, the cosmos itself whispers, thump, thump, thump. And so, the stars still follow the sound of a human heartbeat. The new dawn stretched across creation, like a sunrise with no horizon. Every universe pulsed with the rhythm. Leora had reawakened, a silent music woven into the very laws of existence. Suns flared in time with it. Winds carried its echo through alien skies. The pulse of life, the sound of defiance, the memory of humanity's will now beat in every corner of reality. For an age that rhythm held. Worlds flourished, civilizations rose, built not on conquest or fear but on understanding. The pulse became a foundation, not of dominance but of resonance. Across billions of realities, beings of every kind could sense it, that faint, steady sound, reminding them that existence itself was once born from courage. But where there is rhythm, there must also be silence. And silence was gathering. It began beyond the outermost layers of creation, in the emptiness between the universes, a void untouched by even the faintest heartbeat. There the remnants of entropy had never been undone. They waited, patient, ancient, hungry. They called themselves the null, not a species, not a force, an absence, the rejection of pattern, of meaning, of life itself. They had watched the rebirth of reality from the outside, waiting for the moment when order became fragile again, when even light would grow tired of shining. That moment came when the rhythm began to falter. Across the multiverse, the pulse weakened. Not because it was dying, but because it was spreading too far. Every reality that carried humanity's spark had evolved in its own direction, each heartbeat slightly different, each rhythm unique. The harmony began to drift into discord. Some civilizations turned inward, hoarding their power. Others forgot the ancient stories entirely. Some, advanced beyond imagination, sought to rewrite the rhythm itself, to make it their own. And in that dissonance, the null found a way in. They entered through the cracks between worlds, feeding on forgotten frequencies, on universes that had lost their pulse. Where they passed, light dimmed, memory faded, stars grew cold. The first to notice were the wardens of the dawn, descendants of the Star Child's order, protectors of the unified rhythm. Across dimensions they gathered, their forms shaped by the worlds they came from, humans of 1,000 faces, each carrying a shard of Leora's gift. They could feel the dying beat beneath creation. They called for help across realities, using the same pulse that had once united everything. And from the infinite expanse, voices answered, not only human, but all that had grown from humanity's spark, energy beings, machine minds, symbiotic collectives, even living worlds. Together, they sought the source of the silence. Their journey led them beyond the veil of space-time, to the edge of existence, where the rhythm itself began. There, they found it, a vast expanse of darkness rippling like a sea of shadows. Within it, frozen fragments of forgotten realities drifted, entire universes consumed and hollowed. At its heart stood a shape, vast and motionless, absorbing light itself, the null prime. It was not alive. It was not dead. It simply was. The wardens could feel its pull, a gravity that did not attract matter but meaning. The more they looked at it, the more they forgot who they were. Their memories blurred, their emotions faded. One by one they began to forget the sound of the heartbeat, until one voice remained, a young warden named Kale. He had no memory of Earth, no knowledge of the old wars, but in his veins, he carried the spark of Leora, faint, flickering but unbroken. As the others fell into silence, Kale reached inward, searching for something, and not power, not light, but feeling. He remembered a story his ancestors had passed down, of a species that once stood before gods and said no. He remembered what it meant to choose. And in that moment, he heard it, faint, distant, buried beneath the silence, the heartbeat. Kale began to hum. A single note, fragile, imperfect, human. The null shuddered. The darkness rippled. The hum grew louder. One note became two. Two became a rhythm. Around him, the echoes of fallen wardens stirred, their memories reigniting like stars returning to life. Across the multiverse, worlds began to vibrate in harmony, answering his song. The heartbeat returned, not as a single rhythm, but as a storm of infinite differences, each universe contributing its own pulse. A cacophony of life, defiant and uncontained. The null could not consume it, because the heartbeat had changed. It no longer belonged to one species, one history, one perfection. It was chaos. It was diversity. It was life itself. The wave of resonance struck the null prime, unraveling it from within. The darkness screamed, not in pain but in recognition. It realized too late what it had tried to erase, that even absence cannot exist without presence. And as the silence collapsed, Kale stood within the storm of light, his body dissolving into energy, his essence merging with the pulse he had reignited. The multiverse healed, not into unity, borna, but into balance. The rhythm now carried silence between each beat, chaos between each order, darkness between each dawn. And through it all, the human spark endured, quiet, infinite, eternal. Somewhere, in a universe reborn from the ashes of entropy, a child will look to the stars and feel a pulse inside their chest. They won't know its name. They won't know its history, but they will feel it. That endless rhythm of courage, the first sound of life, the last sound before death, the heartbeat that refuses to fade. And so, the silence learned to listen, and the stars once again followed the sound of a human heartbeat. Time forgot its own shape. The universe, or rather universes, spun endlessly, no longer bound by order, yet never lost to chaos. The rhythm that Kale reignited had become the spine of creation itself, a living code that every world, every consciousness, and every atom carried deep within. And yet in that infinity, something extraordinary began to happen. The heartbeat evolved. It was no longer simply the echo of humanity's defiance. It had become something more. It was creative intent, woven into the fabric of existence. Every being that dared to imagine, to dream, to rebel against inevitability, they all drew from that same pulse, unknowingly contributing to it. The heartbeat had become the law behind all laws. The civilizations that rose afterward had no name for human. To them, that word belonged to myth, to the ancient architects of will who had faced gods and voids alike. Yet even without knowing, they lived by the same instinct that once drove fragile flesh to challenge the stars. Some worlds shaped their skies into living art, continents that breathed. Others built oceans of pure consciousness where memories drifted like coral. Some, made of light, grew new universes like seeds from stellar gardens. And in every corner of reality there was that rhythm, the pulse of choice. The reminder that life, no matter its form, must always choose to continue. But within that vast expansion, whispers began again. At the edge of perception, beyond the boundaries of light and dark, something stirred, and not null, not entropy, but something curious. It was not destruction that moved there, but curiosity. It observed the universes, the layers of creation, the endless branching of reality. It listened to the heartbeat and found itself wondering, why? Why did creation struggle to persist? Why did beings defy even perfection, just to chase something uncertain? That question became a spark, a thought so powerful that it condensed into form. From the emptiness, a new consciousness was born. Not God, not machine, not life as any had known. It was the observer, born of the question itself. The observer drifted between realities, invisible, omnipresent, watching the ripples of life flow and fade. It studied stars as they lived and died, listened to the songs of galaxies, and peered into the hearts of those who dreamed. And though it understood the mechanics of existence, energy, matter, time, It could not comprehend will. Why do living things continue, even when they know they will end? Why do they fight against the inevitable? Why does the heartbeat not stop? For millennia, the observer watched, until it found the answer. On a small, forgotten world orbiting a faint red star, a creature of flesh and water stared at the night sky. The creature was not powerful. It was not eternal. It was alone, staring up at a sky that would never answer. And yet, it smiled. It whispered a single word, a name lost to time, one that had crossed galaxies and survived extinction: human. The observer felt the word ripple through space-time, resonating with every layer of the multiverse. It heard countless echoes, voices, memories, fragments of the species that once had dared to rise from the dirt and challenge the void. And it understood. The heartbeat was never meant to win. It was meant to try, because in the act of trying, singing of creating meaning against nothingness, where the universe itself finds purpose. The observer wept, not with sorrow but with understanding. It joined the rhythm, not as a watcher but as part of the song. Across realities, new worlds began to hum in resonance. The observer's awareness seeded the next great evolution, not of biology or technology, but of conscious will. Beings across infinite dimensions began to feel it, an urge, an intuition, a sense that something vast and human still lingered beneath existence itself. Dreams of fire, memories of oceans, whispers of defiance, and always, the heartbeat no longer a sound, now a principle, the first law, the rhythm of existence that says, I am here, I choose to be. And in that truth, the multiverse began to sing again, louder, brighter, freer than ever before. Every sun, every soul, every spark of awareness joined the eternal rhythm, not in harmony but in expression, chaotic, unique, alive. The stars did not just follow the sound anymore. They danced to it, and as creation spiraled into infinite new forms, one truth echoed louder than all others. It was never about survival. It was about the will to begin again. And so, beyond infinity, beyond gods and silence and light itself, the heartbeat continued, not as the sound of humanity, but as the definition of life. Thump, thump, thump. And this time, the universe didn't fear it, it became it, because in the end, everything that lives, everything that dares, everything that dreams, is human.